Welcome to Hard Boiled, the podcast that plunges into the wild world of event planning. Get ready to uncover the secrets behind crafting unforgettable experiences. Hear some fun inside stories as we explore the heart and soul of event planning with luxury planning guru, Louis Avanti. This is gonna be a fun ride.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of Hard Boiled. I'm Louis Avanti. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of being on with a very good friend, an excellent event designer, Phil Sammut from Pedestals Florals. Hi, Phil.
Hello,
Good morning.
everybody.
How are
How
you?
are you? Very well,
I'm doing,
Thank you.
I'm doing fantastic. I love doing this stuff, because it's a good way to talk to my friends, talk to professionals in the industry. I always walk away with something more. And I think education and conversation about the industry is important, not only for the consumer, but also for other professionals that are stalking us and listening to us and seeing what our point of view on it.
Well, it's a great
Um,
perspective, seeing it from different angles of the industry, from
yeah,
a
yeah,
standpoint,
definitely.
the planner. So there's always something knowledgeable that comes out of it, and we walk away a little bit smarter. So,
Yeah, I always
which
walk away with something. You never stop learning. I was at an event last night, and a girl came up to me and she goes, "I know you from someplace." And we're trying to match. Where you talk about, where she works, where she worked before that, where I did work, and it turned out I never been to any places that she worked, but she knows me from the podcast.
well, that's
And then she
great.
goes, "Oh, wait, I follow you on Instagram. You're the guy that does all those promos." I said, "Yeah, that's me. Thank you for the following." She goes, "Oh, I love them. They're right to the point." I said, "Do you have a comment or that kind of stuff?" She goes, "Nah." I said, "So I know there's a lot of people watching, Phil, but they don't always comment. They always want to look. They
But it's
stalk."
funny. I was in my showroom the other day, and a client walked in, and she's like, "Oh my God, you're the TikTok guy." I'm like, "Who? Me?
Yes,
What?" I'm so not accustomed to that, but apparently
neither
now
am
that
I.
yeah, it
Yeah,
takes and everybody sees it and watches it, which is a great way of putting yourself out there, putting your knowledge out there, and seeing what's updated trends and making you current. So it's a great
yeah.
way of
Phil has a great TikTok. Phil, what's your TikTok? What's your
it's
handle?
pedestals floral decorators.
And TikTok, he has a good one, right? Better
Yeah,
than
it's
mine in the
fun. I'm
sense that,
having fun with it. I'm being
yeah, yeah.
myself. Yeah, so
Right,
it's
and
just
it's
working.
all you need to be, right? But
That's
Phil
it.
goes to the event. He shows the location. He's telling them what he's doing. He explains the floral. He says how he builds things, how he puts it together, which is really fascinating to both sides. As I say, both sides meaning the consumer and the professional, right?
Right.
Because they're saying, "How did you make the staircase look so great?" And he goes, "Oh, we put Oasis down, and then we fill it in." And and you say, "Does anybody really care?" Yeah, they care because the process is a lot easier than when you
Right.
just visually look at the final a lot more difficult, I should say, than looking at the final process and say, "Oh, look at that, whatever, flowers."
Right. And it's also too, it's that every facility has a different way of operating. So you have to be
Correct.
knowledgeable on how to install, what not to install, how to apply it. And also too, it shows it's educational in the sense to how we do things. If it shows somebody else, we learn from it as well. So actually, and then it shows you the amount of layers and depth there is to actually doing events. It's not just that you show up and everything's a snap of a finger, it's all done. The load-ins, the load-outs, the processing, the staffing,
But
different
that's
people.
the magic, Phil, the complete transformation. How we get there, we don't know. It's almost like if you had to compare it to something. I'm thinking about you go into a Michelin star restaurant and they bring your tasting menu out and the waiter describes everything in extreme detail,
Mhm.
almost too much detail to make you feel special. And then, but if you go backwards now and you say, wow, they grew this bean in the hills of, Colombia and they had to pick it, and some guy
It
drove
makes
it
you
on his
it makes you
bicycle.
respect the industry and the trade a
Right.
bit
It
more.
makes you respect the
Yeah,
process rather than
100%.
just say, went in there and cook some,
Absolutely.
what is that? Right. And the complexity of the kind of events that we do, all the things that we have to put together under one umbrella, and on this podcast, I talk a lot about walkaway vendors. A walkaway vendor is a term that I coined that I can say I can hire someone like Phil for one of my clients, as I can do for a couple of other event designers, and I can walk away from Phil because I don't have to monitor what Phil does or what his company does because I know it's always going to be better than I expect it to be, and it's going to be 10 times better than the client expects it to be, and that
Well,
doesn't happen by chance.
but I also think there's a dual obligation here, not only to the client itself, it's also to the relationship you have with the planner like yourself, and bringing
Correct.
that idea because it represents you, it represents the client. There's multiple levels to it, and it's also about there's a trust factor. There's that we're going to execute it better than what you anticipate it to be, and that's important because
Exactly.
can't take on that responsibility or obligation because we can't redo this tomorrow. We can't correct it. It's not like we're painters where, oh, the client doesn't like the color of the shade of paint you look. We can't, we have to nail it the first time. So there is that degree of confidence, and you need that like structure in it to make sure that once you sign off on working with a specific vendor, they're going to execute better than you anticipated. And that's very important.
Exactly. And it's very funny because you say that. And again, but Phil, not every vendor, not every event designer in this case is like you or like some other people that I work with. There are situations I've had
Well, I
in the
think
past
that attests to the
that,
longevity that we're in the industry. We
right.
wouldn't
Well,
be.
that's longevity is important, but there are also a lot of people, believe it or not. And I tend to know a lot more about what other people do than the people that do it, because I see many different heads, and there are people that I work with that have been in business for like 30 years, and I'll walk into a room and the client insists on using them, and I'll walk in and I'll say, and they go, "Oh, is everything okay?" I said, "Not really. This is empty." There was an event that I did a few, not probably pre-COVID, but it was funny. The client was all hyper to hire this florist, and I said, work is a little shaky there, right? But I'll see if I can work with it. It wasn't my first choice, but I have to go sometimes, give in, as they say. I don't do it anymore, but back then I probably did. But it was funny because I walked into the room and I said, "Could you remove the barcodes under the plates that people are sitting down? When you look up at a centerpiece, there's the plate that holds the actual oasis, which is the sponge that holds the flowers, that holds the water, and I could see the big barcode, made in China underneath it." And she goes, "Oh, but I got to take all the flowers off now." I said, "I don't really give a shit what you got to do, but I can't look at the barcode." I
No,
said,
a little trick to that, I'll tell you easily for another
it's funny,
florist.
but it's true. It happened to me. And
Yeah,
then she
no,
had to
but
put
it's funny.
fabric. She put like white fabric underneath. And I said, "Well, now you need to cover the fabric a little bit, because
Just
now
get
I'm
a
looking up at the fabric."
clean white bowl first, and then put your bowl mechanics over it. So it's you don't have to deal with seeing any of
Well,
those
I guess
mechanics.
but they didn't know that,
Well, yeah,
obviously.
it's very simple because I go around. It's funny. I go around and I go underneath each table and I try to look up to see because honestly, yes, you stand up, you walk in, it looks beautiful. Then you look up when you're sitting down and you see wires and you see stems
All
and
the mechanics.
water.
Yeah, and I tell people
Kills the whole thing. It kills it. You just kill the whole design if you just kill it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When I
So
do
it's
a
funny.
demo,
Little
I always
things
tell
like
people,
that matter. Little things like that matter. The details.
they
Yeah.
matter a lot because I look at a
Yeah.
bride's mom, they're looking at a demo and they're staring at it from the top. And I said, why don't you sit down? Sit down at the table. And they go, "Okay." And I go, "Look up. What do you see?" And they go, "Oh." I said, "This is what you're going to be looking at all night." I said, "Yeah, eventually you're going to look up and you're going to look to the left and
I
everybody's
also
going to
say
look
that,
up. So it has to be as beautiful underneath as it is on top."
but I also think the florist or the person working on it should have a little bit more pride in how they present themselves because
It all depends
flowers
on
in
the
its
level
own
you
right,
work
they're
with.
all beautiful.
It depends on
Well,
the level
flowers are
you
always
work at.
beautiful. Correct. And I think that people need to be educated to see the value of that because opposed to having 10 people doing the setup, maybe you need 12 people to do the setup to
Correct.
fine tune that. And truthfully, that's the way it should be done because those minor details, I mean, are imperative on every level of the wedding. I don't think it's just the decor. It's every level, even the way the band is dressed, to the roadies, the way they dressed.
No,
all that plays a big, to the way the linens are
totally,
pressed.
I couldn't agree with you more. Couldn't agree with you more.
It's absolutely. I think I think that's at a point in our careers, we need to make sure that we present better than any because we've put the time in. We've seen the good, the bad, and now it's making sure everything's done on the good.
And it's funny because some people will just assume that no one notices. And I'm saying everybody notices something, right? So my job is to make sure they notice as least as possible. Everything has to be perfection from the way the table is set, from the way the chairs are aligned, from the measurements of between each table setting, the way the glassware looks on the table. The tablescape is very, very important to me.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
the
the
lighting,
mood, the
that's
lighting.
another dimension and perspective, of course, it goes without say. But, when we look at all these wonderful things that people do at events and how they put them together and how they sort of like come together as one big package, the detail is very, very important. But there still are event designers that are sloppy that we have to, manage. And I don't really want to manage anybody. At the level that I work,
Listen,
I want people that are going to come in and I go, "Wow, look at that. This is so stunning. So
I
stunning."
mean, you're the captain of the ship, okay, and you're going to sail that ship for that day and for that event. And you need to make sure all your first mates and all your team is sailing it the right way with you to execute it and get you to the location you need to be at. the right way, because it plays a role. Even timing is such a big thing, because it's choreographed. Everything has to be choreographed. You can't have you can't finish the tables until the tables are set with the proper linen and
Right.
charge and then spaced accordingly for the lighting. So it's so much that goes into it.
It's interesting you say that, because I talk about the timing of a wedding, is the most important aspect of the wedding, how the engagement and how you integrate certain elements to make the wedding flow properly. But now you're bringing up something else, which, I haven't touched upon, but a very good point. The timing of the setup is also very important, right? You can't do this before that. You can't do this before that. And like when you're running too late in a setup, the lighting people can't do their job, right?
And
Or
also
they
just
do
the
problem.
loadings too. I mean, it has to be
How about when we say we're all set and I decide, I walk into the room and they say, oh shit, here he comes. And I say, these tables are too close. We got to pick it up and move it, right? And now the lighting has to be reset because I moved the table.
Right.
And they say, can you just leave it there? And I say, no, it just doesn't work. There's too much space. I said, it's way off. We have to move the table.
No,
And they look at me and they go, oh shit, now we got to move all the lights again. And I said, well, you should have waited till I finished the room. You should have waited till I got in here. You should have waited. I said, this is not my fault. This is your fault. Right.
There's always,
And
I
it's
always,
true that you say that. Very important.
there's always something that occurs the day of that you have to kind of work with. So you have to be prepared for that as well. But ultimately, those minor changes need to not affect the overall aesthetic of that wedding. So, there are certain things that you can kind of say, okay, if we push this table here and that table there, it'll work. But sometimes it needs to be dismantled and put in the right place. And you can't just do that, because if it's going to affect the overall aesthetic and things, it's wrong. It's not what the client expects. It's not what your vision is, and you have to do it. So the right team plays a role in making sure this is the right way. Or communication. Communicate to say.
Communication, I say, is key all along. Put it in
100%.
writing. Put it in writing. Review it. What time are you coming in? How long do you need? What time of the? I always put on my timeline, room ready, and I put a time down. And then I speak to my event designer and I say, so I need the room ready at 4. Bride is coming at 5. Will I be ready at 4? And they always say yes, but I actually need the room ready at 5 because she's coming at 6.
Exactly.
Right?
I was going to say, bump it up an hour, cover yourself just to be safe.
The favorite. I'm putting together. You want to say we'll call it a book, but like a guide or a book. And one of my chapters is called. I said it's never 5 minutes. Right. The favorite line in our entire industry.
5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes.
I need 5 minutes. I said, how much do you need? They go, 5 minutes. This my favorite people are makeup people. How much time do we need? How much time? He goes, give me like 5-10 minutes. I said, can you please tell me exactly how much time you need? Don't stroke me. Just tell me. I will adjust based on that. And they go, realistically, is it 20? And they go, give me half an hour. Right?
But it's true.
They don't
why
understand.
Not just
they think
transparent about it.
Right. Well, they think by appeasing me because they're late already. And if I say 5 minutes, I say, okay, then they take 10. When I come, they don't understand that I'm going to come back in 10. I said, are we done? And that's a bad thing because the bride now is stressed because she's right there. I have no other way of talking to the makeup artist. I can't pull her away because that seems like something is wrong, right? And I say it with a smile. And I'll turn around and I say, how much longer? And they go, 5 minutes. I said, how did I give you 30? Is 30 good?
Like that affects logistics too, because if you have a first look taking place at 2:30 and the bride's not going to be ready till 3 o'clock, maybe the groom and his family could be doing pictures elsewhere. Later in the day, but there's communication.
Listen, I always add so much time into the day. And sometime a bride will tell me, she goes, why do I have to start so early? I said, because you may be running on time, but there's a really good chance that half the other people are going to run late, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. If we run early, just think of the beauty. You and your fiance, husband-to-be, can actually walk the property, walk the room hand in hand, and enjoy a moment. So I'm going to give you that moment, and I'm not going to stress you. Right.
Yeah,
because
it's true, but when you're behind schedule, the day is
worst thing. I'm never behind schedule. But they say, well, the photographer said that we have to start now. I said, well, the photographer's wrong. They don't set the timeline. Louis sets the timeline. Nora sets the timeline. Because this is the way we do things. And you
also have the ability to forecast, saying, okay, there's a little bit of traffic. People won't be showing up this time.
I know what they're going to do. I know when they're going to show up.
That's a skill, and that's your skill set. That's the beauty of hiring.
I know it's called you, but ultimately, Phil, it's called human nature, right? It's called human nature. And I tell people, I go, look, this is not a military operation. This is a wedding. This is like fun. This is happy,
No
right?
need
Let
for
me work
added
with the
stress.
elements, right?
No need
Let me
for it.
work with the elements, right? Let me go in the room and say, oh my God, the event designers will come to me or go to Nora, go to somebody on my team and say, how do you want the napkin set? Do you want it like
Mhm.
this? Do you want it like this? You want it like this? You want it like that? And I'll tell them, I said, let's try it a couple different ways. Let's do it that way. And then don't put them down before I get there because I'm going to make you change
Right.
them, right?
Well,
And
actually, that's the thing that should truthfully be understood. It's like this is like I said, you're the captain of the ship. If you want the napkin rolled or you want it festooned, however you want it to be,
right, but
and
I'll
then
take all. Listen, I will always take suggestions from talented people. And the first thing I say, how do you see it, Phil? How do
Mhm.
you see it? Because, you do this all the time. I have a good eye, but you're the expert. I never take that away from anyone, whether it's a performer, whether it's an event designer. Tell me what you think. I think this is very elegant. Go with it. I
And
have to
that's the
follow
beauty
my
of working
people.
with the beauty of working with you, and your clients trust you enough to determine that with the professional to know exactly the right placement that they're going to like. And that's the difference.
Thank
It's
you.
not like
Yeah.
some event planners will be like, hold on, I have to ask with the bride what she wants. By the time the
I
wedding day
doesn't
comes,
know.
exactly, and she's going to defer to you anyway. So your clients know that you're going to make the best decision that's going to represent them and their taste palette accordingly, and it's going to run seamless. And that's the beauty of
Absolutely.
having somebody like you working with somebody
Absolutely.
else. And that's important.
So,
That's very important.
so Phil, not to go into like how long we've been doing this, but how long you've been doing this?
Oh my God, I'm gonna age myself right now. I'm Flowers 35 years, basically. I started while I was in college and
Phil
I
started
built,
when he was in middle school.
oh my God, it's sometimes I look back and I say, wow, wow. But I gotta tell you, there's not a day that gets up that I don't love what I'm doing. And I think as the years go
Right.
on, the
Phil
confidence
always
and
has a lot
the
of passion in
passion,
what he does.
I,
Yeah.
I I take it to heart and I really and I over the years, like none of us were perfect. We always make it, but you learn from your mistakes and you perfect them and you don't let them
Well,
happen again.
you can only learn from your mistakes. And I
Right.
see such a tremendous evolution in like decor from when I started back when to now. I remember the days that nobody did upgraded linens, not even the high end weddings. It
Now it's a
wasn't a thing.
norm. Now it's a
Right
norm.
now, you can't do house linens, right? Everybody does linens, right? And then we
Lighting
go,
as well.
yeah,
Lighting too. Yeah.
yeah. Phil actually introduced me to some of the vendors that I use still to today, right?
Mhm.
And he did weddings many years ago, and I introduced them to other people, and that's how the industry runs, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. And then, oh, we need to do a tablescape. We need to do a charger plate. What the hell is a charger plate, right? I remember the
Mhm.
days when the Plaza Hotel didn't have a choice menu. Everybody got filet mignon.
Period. That's it.
Everybody. There was no such thing. And I would say, why don't you do another choice? He goes, oh no, it confuses the kitchen. The fuck
Mhm.
does that mean? It confuses the kitchen, right?
No, but
But
the
now,
reality of it is, why things evolved. I think things evolved very big. Obviously, social media. Everybody's exposed to these beautiful
well,
things, and
social, we're
also,
going to get that into a second, but just the evolution of our market in New York City, tri-state area has evolved tremendously over the years. And I tell everybody, we are in the most competitive, best, most affluent, most innovative, and by far the most versatile wedding market in the entire country, if not the world. By
that's
far.
absolute
They
fact.
just don't
Absolute
do
fact.
shit the way we do it. And
And
even if you go to LA, and I've done events in LA, do my events in Miami, they still sometimes, and no matter how high end the hotel is or high end everything is, they're still relatively clueless on some of the stuff, right? They're still
it's
like a decade behind, and I get like, oh, you're from New York, you do it that way. I'm saying, no, this is just the way it's done. What are you
listen. The
talking about?
Northeast, nobody, and I think you summed it up
Don't say
perfectly.
the Northeast, Phil. Boston is still behind us. Hate to say it to my
So I was
Bostonians.
saying
I
New
love
York
you
and New
guys, but
Jersey.
they don't have it yet, right?
Again, but it's funny how what it is I think why that's so key is because all the different cultures we have here. So I think that what happens is the different cultures have different things that are significantly important to them, like some the food in for certain weddings, the decor for certain weddings, the
I,
timing,
I think I think you're right. The diversity of cultures, but LA has
right.
the diversity of cultures also. They still don't do what we do, right? Miami now is very cultural as well. I think it's just the mecca of what New York City is, of what the amount of food, restaurant, fashion that runs
I
through
just think
here,
the glamour of a New York
trends.
wedding, a city wedding, the glamour of a New York City wedding, being able to walk down Fifth Avenue in your wedding dress, surrounded by
Just
tourists
is.
from around the world, it's priceless. That energy
Just
is
is what it is. It just is what it. You're never going to take that away,
100%.
right?
And
you
then
know.
going into these beautiful venues and being exposed to history, iconic dining rooms, ballrooms where movies were, I mean, that presidents of states hosted events there. It's just like a different energy. It's a different vibe. It's
Absolutely.
incredible.
Historical value. Listen, and this can be achieved in Europe also if you go to like in Rome and so on, but it's just different because ultimately they're microcosms of what New York is, because it is the capital of food, capital of fashion, capital of
We can
business,
have everything.
capital of a
You
lot
can
of
have
different
anything,
things.
the best of
Right.
fashion. That's the cutting edge of anything. And honestly, you very rarely do you hear the word no. If you can afford to have something here, it'll get done for you. I mean, it will get done if you
We can
want
do anything.
anything. It's the truth.
I was talking to two planners last night, two young planners, which very, very nice people. And, they started their business. They look really, really good at what they do. And we just started talking. So a friend introduced us. And at first it looked at me like kind of weird, but then they started, understanding what I do. And they're asking me questions and so on. And I'm saying, oh, I really want to do a wedding in Europe. Oh, I really want to do a wedding here. And I said, you don't understand the complexity of working abroad. And I've done many weddings in Mexico, Italy. I've done weddings in Dominican. I've done a lot of high-end stuff there. And you don't understand. I said, in New York City, if I did a wedding at Peak a few years ago, a big party, and at Peak in Hudson Yards, and the event designer looks at me and she goes, "Oh, I need 6 more, you know, lights for my centerpieces." I said, "You never told me you were lighting those. You told me you're using candles. They don't need a pin spot." And they go, "Well, I've changed my mind. They need a pin spot." And she looked at me
Not pretty supposed to pull it out of
almost like a little smirk. She went like, where are you going to get a pin spot at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a rainy Saturday? And I said,
Mhm.
okay, give me a minute. And I made 2 phone calls. And on the second phone call, guy says to me, he goes, "Hey, Lou, we just got a cancellation. We were actually coming back to the office. I got a truck that's coming back to the warehouse. I'm making them turn around now. They'll be there in 20 minutes."
Well,
And
but there's a reason
but
why
these
that happened.
but these are the
There's a reason.
connections we have. If
Correct.
I'm
It's
in Italy and the sax player calls me up and he goes, "Oh, by the way, I can't make it today. My dog died."
Mhm.
Where am I going to get a sax player, in Lake Como at, 3 o'clock in the afternoon that's supposed to play cocktail? I say, you have to understand that, ladies, when they were talking to them, the connections and the kind of support you have in your friendship connection group
Your
here
history.
is
Yes,
not
your history.
existent if you go to Maryland. Forget about going to Europe. I said, this is why the key thing and elements in our world here, I can call Phil and he'll help me out. I'll help Phil. If Phil ever calls me up on a Saturday at 2 o'clock, my
Absolutely.
manager, everybody canceled. I know you don't know how to do this, but I know you could probably run a crew. Can you
Throw
do
a
this?
suit on me. I'm
Everybody,
there. We'll do
everybody
everything. Yeah.
drops everything. This is code red in our industry. We don't
Yes.
ask why and how. We just go, right?
No, and
And
that's the key to it. And you'll support the people. Like if there's a long history, listen, our ultimate, we all understand because what happens is we want our client to be elated with their end results. We don't want to cause
related,
anybody any stress. Whatever it's going to take, we're going to do.
whatever it takes.
That's
How we get there, irrelevant. The fact that we got it there
it's funny you say about
is
working
what's important.
internationally. Years back, I'm gonna go back about 20 years. We were hired to do a wedding in Aruba.
There you
And
go.
at first the element, the excitement's there, we're working international and so, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh wow, we have to, our flowers are international. You have to clear customs. So the flowers have to clear customs in Miami and flown to Aruba. So apparently you find out that with cargo is like the last thing they put on a plane, depending on the weight of, the amount of people on the plane, the amount of their pack luggage and so on. And it kept getting bumped from one flight to the second flight to the third flight to the fourth flight.
Right.
So then all of a sudden, here I am sitting at the Aruba International Airport, begging American Airlines, trying to get some clarity to this. And basically, fortunately enough, the flowers got there. But I will tell you, there was a few hours of tenseness saying, "Oh my God, I'm in a
What
foreign
do I
country.
do?
What
What
do
do
I
I
do?
do?
How do I pull this off?" I'm making every call, of course, Aruba to see who has an inventory of what. And honestly, they don't carry the inventory. It's not like the United States.
And also they don't know you, right?
Correct.
So
You're
there's no
right.
like sense of like we got to help Phil out because then he owes us, or
Oh
we're
my God.
friends, or doesn't happen,
I
right?
was literally standing in the cargo area. I think I made friends with everybody in the cargo area. I still probably go back now, they'll remember me because I was a crazy guy going looking for the flowers. But fortunately enough, those flowers made it. And it was, you all of a sudden through my head was like, oh my God. Like panic started to set in that if these flowers do not arrive, what are we going to do? But Fortunately, everything worked out, but there was a few hours of
Of
little
course,
chaos. Yeah.
Phil, I did a big high-end wedding in the Dominican Republic many years ago. And when we were showing the client the huppah that was going to be on the beach, she wanted the whole top to be in white Phalaenopsis orchids, right? And I did a couple trips to the Dominican, and on my last trip, which was like 3 weeks before the wedding, I was coming back and then going back to do all the finals. Um, the woman goes to me. I said, let's review all the floral again, what you're going to be doing. And she goes, but you know, I can't get these, right? I said, what do you mean you can't get
Three
these?
weeks out.
She goes, I said, these are what she wants. These are Phalaenopsis orchids. She goes, oh, I know what they are, but they're legal here. They're not available in the country. I said, well, what do you mean? She goes, well, I just figure we're just a color. We just do another color. We do
Yeah,
roses. I said,
that's
that's not
crazy.
going to work for this client. So I'm here in New York going to the flower market, buying 200 stems of silk
Yeah, that's what
Phalaenopsis orchids. And
make
when
it
I
happen.
get there, of course, they open my suitcase, right? And I got this other suitcase full of orchids. And I go, what's this? You can't import these. I said, what are these? Are silk. She goes, what are they for? I said, my friend's house. I'm decorating my friend's house, you know?
Yeah,
And the guy looks
yeah.
at me and he goes, okay. And he shut them off and I brought them and all the florals on top were, but you can't tell it was so high. It was all silk.
It's
And
funny you
after
mentioned.
the cocktail hour, they moved them all to the reception, you know? And, she got her Phalaenopsis, but if you don't know, she would have none of that. She would have like, who the hell knows, birds of paradise sticking out of the hoopah.
Well, it's funny. We did a big Greek wedding. From They lived in Queens, New York, and they wanted something different, and they rented a villa in the Dominican. Beautiful property. It was stunning. And what happened is the bride and her planner she was working with sent over, for the bridal party, all the robes and all their like accessories
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
day of, and all these other products. And when they cleared customs, they had them declare them because they thought they were reselling them. So they
of
held
course.
them in customs and they were not able to get them out in time. So all those like accessories, bridesmaid, all those robes, they presented it. The government thought they were going to be there for resale and they did not release them until they had to file certain documents. So there's things that happen that, you would never
Yeah,
take the foresight of
it's
knowing
not
that this
as
is the
easy
case.
as
Yeah,
you think it is.
it's
There's a
not.
lot of
It's
shit going
not.
on. Yeah,
Yeah,
a lot of obstacles.
and things that you would never contend to think of that would be an obstacle. So,
Right,
that's
right.
the scarier part. So,
You go, what? I
yeah.
never forget. I did a wedding in Italy many years ago also, and we had all set. We rented a villa to actually do the ceremony, and then we're going to go to the venue. And the day before, 2 days before the wedding, I was talking to the florist, and she goes, "You got the permit for the villa?" I said, "Well, no, we rented it. We paid the invoice." And she goes, "Oh no, but you can't have a wedding there unless you get a permit from the city." I said, "Okay." Nobody told me. He goes, "Oh, well, that's what I know." I said, "Who do you know?" She goes, "Oh, well, my cousin is friends with the guy that works in the town hall." I said, "Call him now. I'm walking over now. What's it going to cost? How much will it cost?" And the guy goes, "We can expedite this. It takes about a week." I said, "We have about an hour. So how do we do this?"
But
And the guy
sometimes
looks at,
sometimes I think they do that on purpose because they know
of
that
course,
yeah,
and I had
they
to
want
pay
to
him like
be taken care of.
350
Yeah, yeah.
euros,
You'll pay
300 under the
anything. Actually,
table.
they could have charged you would pay, at that given moment you'll sell your watch off your wrist to make it
It
happen.
was
So
50 euros for the permit to have a wedding there, right?
mhm.
And then, because that's obviously a civil thing, so it's got to be different, even though it was symbolic. And 300 was like, this is my thank you to you. And he goes, oh, give me like half an hour. And he came back with all these stamps and things on a big piece of paper to
Mhm.
present to the guy at the villa who never asked me for them. I said, you want this? The guy goes, nah, it's okay. I don't. He goes like this. He goes, but these are the things you find out.
Right.
Last minute. The client doesn't know to this day, but but it was just kind of funny that these things happen. So in
Yeah.
your illustrious career, you have, not to talk or talk about it, but anyone. What is your like the worst client that you've ever had, or a situation that was really like, I don't want to say something that you maybe might have turned around, or a
I
client that
would.
was you
Okay,
know
and not that ever would I would never say worst client because you have a different experience with different
Right, right.
clients.
Some clients it's
But
just like there's a
I'm going to
Bridezilla,
say
there's a momzilla, right? There's a
correct, I'm I'm very good with people, and my philosophy is there's always a solution. We can always figure it out. But we dealing with this one particular client, having a nice size wedding, and she basically she wanted things that were not in her budget. So basically,
Oh, happens a lot.
yeah, and you know what is, and she brought on all these images from social media and just stunning. I mean, events that, I mean, the flower budget had to start at 250 to 300. I mean, it was just spectacular elements to this.
Preston Bailey stuff in Dubai.
Oh
You'd say,
my
I
God,
want this.
I was intrigued with it, but I was very transparent from the incubation to say, what do we? These images are, what's the feeling here? Is it a color palette? Is it you
Right.
know, because the scale of this completely trying to. I did that was making her happy. Nothing. I showed her everything, and I even was
Phil,
generous.
Phil, start that sentence again because you froze.
There was nothing that I could do to make her happy once we started showing samples. I was
Right.
very generous with the amount of floral I gave, doing everything in my power to make her happy. But unfortunately, third sample, fourth sample into it. And at one point I just dropped my pen. I said, I give up. I'm done. I don't feel comfortable executing your wedding. And all of a sudden the tears. And she's like, oh my God, Phil doesn't want to work with me. Phil doesn't want to work with me. And I said, it's not that I don't want to work with you. I said, but you're not making realistic expectations. Clearly, what we discussed you were getting, you blocked that out in your mind and you're thinking you're getting this. And I was very transparent with you from incubation. And it just became this, I had to take that control. Once she found out that I wasn't going to work with her anymore, she kind of came back to reality and was understood that I hate making things about money. Well, if you want this, it's $100 more. If you want this, it's
Right.
To me, I don't like operating that way. I like working at the business side of it from the beginning. And then this way we're all on the same page. But when the client was not on the same page with me, I was working with myself. It became very difficult. And I had to pull the plug and tell her I don't feel comfortable doing the wedding. In essence, once that all settled in, her mom calmed it down. We worked everything out. But it was just, it was unnecessary. It was very unnecessary. I mean, you have to make realistic expectations. People have to be realistic what their budget is and what they're going to get.
So I'm going to follow up. That's a good story, but I'm going to follow up with another question. And we have all fired clients in the past because I know it's not going to get any better, right? As they say, right? So we let go of that now. But how do you tell a client, and I've asked this to my other friend, event designer, the same question on the podcast. How do you tell a client that has no taste that she has no taste? Right?
Okay.
They'll show you something and you look at it and go, oh my God, what the hell is this? This is not going to work at all. This looks like shit.
I always say your taste palette and the ideas you want, first of all, I don't feel comfortable doing because they're not going to project well. They might sound well. And I said, it's not a proper representation of the brand of what we do.
I really like it, Phil. This is what I want.
But I don't feel comfortable.
And you're paid to make me happy.
Yeah. As a professional, I don't feel we're going to execute this on a level that is going to work. It's not going to look right. And I just don't feel comfortable working with this. I'll help you with anything else I could do for you, but I don't feel comfortable putting my name on it. And I've said that to clients in the past.
Right.
I've had to, because I can't give them, I want cherry blossoms in October. Well, they don't exist. Well, can you find them? They don't exist. And no, okay, what if we do this and add this to this to create this? Not going to work. Can we add a glitter to this? Oh, no, absolutely not. I don't do that. Like, some of the things people want is like, oh my God, that is so far removed from my taste palette and the brand. My job is to bring your vision to life. And if I honestly feel I cannot execute it the right way or properly, I don't want to be part of it. I mean,
remember years ago?
Unfortunately, and I love people. I love working with. I love challenges. I love coming up with different ideas.
Right. Me too.
But at the end of the day, certain things you just can't do, and you have to remember it gets you in trouble.
Remember years ago, I want to say the cheap florists, they used to spray paint the flowers any color you wanted them, right? So they used to get white hydrangeas. They used to make them purple. They used to make them green. They used to make them blue. They used to make them. And I'm saying, what the hell are you doing, And they goes, well, the client wanted it to be red, I said, but just can't tell the client you can't do it. Oh, no, that's what the client wants.
I'll tell you now what they do is like.
Now, it doesn't work that way anymore. There's an event designer in New York City, which I won't mention. He's funny. And we were walked in a walkthrough many years ago at one of the hotels. And the client looked at him and she goes, I really not happy with that design. And he stopped and he looked at her and he goes, are you a designer? And she goes, no. He goes, you like my stuff, right? She goes, yeah. He goes, don't tell me what to do anymore. He goes, your friends and family are going to love what I do. You hired me because of what I do. If you don't trust me, let's not work together anymore. She goes, oh, no. I'm good. I just didn't like that. He goes, I'll help you with it, but don't tell me how to design. He goes, I'm the designer. If you were a designer, I listen to you, but you're not a designer.
And I
And it
think
was kind of funny. She shut up, but I was like, wow, that's very, very strong. But you know what? Sometimes it has to be that way.
I
You
mean, there's a
don't
way
tell the
to
chef how
convey,
to cook, how
yeah,
to saute. You don't do this,
correct.
you don't do that, right?
There's a way to convey the message, in the right words and in the right tone to make. But then some people don't get it. So sometimes you have no choice to be firm in your words because it's your brand on it. If you know in your heart of heart that that execution of that event is not going to be happen that way, or time does not allow it, or the product's not going to be available what they're envisioning, you need to kind of protect save
And
your
I cut it in the
integrity.
bud right away. Sometimes we'll meet a photographer, videographer, or any kind of vendor at any level from a client that saw him on Instagram, right? Right. And I tell people, listen, if there's someone you want to work with that you really love their work, let me know. We'll vet them. We'll put them on a Zoom. We'll see what goes on. I'll ask the right questions, but I'll always give you the opportunity to work with whomever you want. And the guy comes on and he starts talking and doing this and doing that. And I said, okay, listen, thank you so much for your time. It's very helpful. Thank you so much. We will be in touch, and I'll tell the client to stay on, right? The guy goes off. What do you think? I said, he's an absolute idiot. We're never going to hire him. And they go, but I liked him. I said, you could love him. You can call him. You can have him over for dinner. I said, never going to work on my team. I said, he's an absolute boob, right? And they
But
go,
you're going to see
really?
things, and or you might have a history.
Absolute idiot. He's going to fuck the whole thing up. Just like
Yeah,
that. He doesn't know what he's doing, what he's saying. He doesn't have enough experience under his belt. Not part of my game. And they
it's
go,
so funny.
okay,
You mentioned like spray painting flowers, because back in the day, the bridesmaids were wearing teal. Teal it is, teal it as a start.
exactly.
But it's so funny now that they stem dye flowers. But some of the stem dyed flowers, truthfully, themselves are horrible. Like there's blue roses are not grown blue. Let's face it. So they stem dye them, and you get these psychedelic color
So
blues.
what did that mean? They inject
What they
dye
do
in
is
the stem?
actually, what they do is when they hydrate them, they'll put like almost like a food coloring in the water, and it drinks it, and it eventually processes that flower to be a specific color. So sometimes they nail colors perfectly, but you're working with flowers that are natural. Why not embrace the beauty of the natural flower when you're trying to
Right.
manipulate nature and getting these colors that don't exist? It's ridiculous, and people love these blue roses. We just recently had a client, and I'm like, I cringe at it. She's like, my bridesmaids are wearing blue. I said, well, why would you want to put blue on top of blue? Like, you're not even going to see it in your picture. So
No
a
one
lot of
cares. I'd say nobody cares. That's stupid.
it is. But it's almost borderline tacky. Like,
Very
I'm sorry.
tacky.
Like, I have no problem telling a client that's not really going to work, and I try to give them 10 other opportunities or
That's
suggestions.
because some girl in California did it and it went on Instagram and she saw it and she pinned it to her board, right? And she said on it because someone else did it
Or the
that has
best is
more
now.
followers than her, that has more followers than her,
I'll give
right?
you another one. Is the AI generated images now? People don't realize
Forget about those.
a lot of these are not real. Like, you're not going to get the ceiling covered every inch with the perfect shade of pink with the embedded.
Yes.
It's just not real. And you have to understand that, like, a lot of these images we're referring to don't exist. They don't
It's
exist.
funny. Phil, you'll like the story. I did a bride a few years ago at a hotel, and she shows me this for a small wedding, and she shows me this picture, right at the venue, right, and she goes, "This is what I want." With the two super long tables, side by side, going about 60 feet. And I looked at it and I said, "This is not a real wedding." And she goes, "Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This is a real wedding." I said, "This is not a real wedding. This is an editorial for either the chair company or the table company or something, but it's not a real wedding." And she goes, "Why do you?" She was very like sort of nasty. So was the mother. "Why are you saying that?" I said, "Well, if I pull the chair out from one side and I pull the chair from the other side, the chairs touch. They crash into each other. So how are people going to get in? How are they going to sit? And how are
How are
they
they going
going
to
to go
serve? How are they going
pee?
to serve?
And how
How's
are
the
they going to
schedule?
go pee? If I got
Yeah,
to go pee, how do I get out? Who are you going to put in the center of the 60-foot table? I mean, seriously, tell me the guest that's going to sit right there. What are you going to size them by weight?" And they look at me and they go, "Oh, I see
Mm,
your point." I said, "This is not real." I said, "You
it's
need X amount of space. You can't put these tables, they were so tight and they were so glued and it was so long. It was beautifully as an editorial, but this is
correct.
not real. And it
It's
could have been AI generated, but it was just so
Well,
funny.
it is funny. There was a last year I sat with several clients, and they were working with a specific plan I've never heard of. When I tell you
Right, of
never heard
course.
of them, and so I did my research to find out who this person, and I looked at their site and their social media site. And I got to tell you, I've never seen more beautiful designed weddings than ever on these two, on all their social media platforms. And I was like, wait a second, there's no way in hell, I'm doing this a long time. I would have heard this person's name. I would have
Right,
saw this
right. You're
person.
in that world,
I
right?
would
You're
have
in
had
that
I would
world.
have had other clients bring in inspiration images, never heard of them. And all their images that they were marketing was AI generated, because and it's unfortunate to that person that
Wow.
they ended up canceling their services with this particular person because they realized that that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. That's not realistic.
Wow, and they've even heard of that.
Yeah,
She generated all the
and
images in AI.
very small wording on their site said some of the images were AI generated. It's not some, it was about 90%. So it's very misleading. So I think as a consumer this day and age, you have to kind of remember that that's something that's something that you might be, dealing with, and should ask those questions. Is this your actual work, your designs? Is this, or was this AI generated? Because that's something that's big, because I've seen it firsthand, and
Bill,
unfortunately,
people have been stealing shit for years. About right before COVID, I did a wedding for a client. I was in Europe traveling. The woman called me. She goes, "You have to do the wedding. You have to do the wedding." I said, "When's the wedding?" 6 weeks. Right? Because it's a mess now. It's a mess now. I said, "Okay, I'm flying back next week." And the first designer I went to see was a woman that had a shop like in Bergen, in like, nice lady, Hispanic flower shop, very sweet lady. And I walked in and I just went to meet her, right? Introduced her, and she had a regular floral shop, with the refrigerators, the whole thing, very small. And I walked in and I said, "Let me ask you a question. Can you do a wedding of this magnitude?" I said, "Because the florals that you are showing are very big. So do you have a warehouse? Do you subcontract it? I need to know. I don't care how you do it. I just need to know." She looks at me. She goes, "Oh, I do big work." I said, "Okay, I'm sorry. I just never heard of you. Just like your situation, never heard of the planner. I never heard of her." I said, "Well, that's impressive. Do you have pictures of that?" She goes, "On the wall." So I go to the wall, and she has like a wall of all photocopied images, like prints from the computer of all this work. And I look at it and I go, one, two, three. There were like 8 pictures. 4 of them were my weddings.
Uh, that happened to me yesterday, as a matter
Right.
of fact.
4 of them are my weddings. So
Yesterday.
I said to her, I said, "This is a nice one. Where was this one?" She goes, "Oh, that was, I don't know. I forgot. I think it was Northern New Jersey." I said, "That's actually the Plaza Hotel." I said, "This is the Pierre." I said, "This is actually in New Jersey." And I said, "This," and she goes, "Oh, you know them?" I said, "They're mine." And she goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "Those are our weddings." I said, "I did all these weddings. This is the bride. This is the bride." They were recent. They were like 2, 3 years old. And she looks at me and she goes, "Well, I didn't say I did it. I said I could do those." And I'm like, "Oh, help me, Jesus."
Now change. But it's funny. Yesterday, a
It was
mother
a,
of
by
a
the way, the wedding was a nightmare. I had to stay up her ass the entire day. At one point she got really nervous and she started. I said, "We can fix this, but it's going to take
But
the whole
when you
afternoon."
have to babysit
I
somebody,
babysat her the whole time.
then it takes away from you doing your job
Yeah,
with other people.
I did it
That's
for the
not fair.
client, but it was, horrific. It
That's
was
funny.
a,
A mother of a bride sent me some images yesterday because they're looking at different floral people, and the mother had a question on something specific, and she sent me something from another, and I looked at the images and I'm like, oh my God, that's my friend's wedding. They just got married in May. That was at Ohika. Oh my God, like this, and it was like, and so I responded to the mother. I said, just so you know, and I sent her back the pictures of the actual events that I did
oh
it.
my
And I said,
God.
just so you're aware, whoever your daughter's comparing this to is using my images. And this was yesterday afternoon. This took place yesterday afternoon.
That's
So,
crazy. But then they'll tell you, well, it was only inspiration. I took it off of Google Images
and
or
they were
something.
stupid enough to use the groom's face in the picture, who's a friend of the family, like who I know became friends with. And I'm like, oh my God, like, I mean, at least block out the person's face if you're going to use someone else's image.
Yeah, yeah.
It was
It's
pretty
sad when you have to go to that, right? Because
yeah.
talent is always acquired through experience. You could be very talented and it could be your first job, so you'll do it for less money and you'll do it a little bit,
Build up
you'll
your
learn
name, your
from it and so on,
reputation.
but it takes a long time to build a reputation in business. This is something AI can't take away from us. AI can write a good email, AI can maybe write a presentation, AI can help us maybe with questions and ideas and concept. It does a
But
great
AI
job
can't
at
get up
that.
on that ladder
They can't
and
get
that
up on the ladder.
ceiling
They
shading room
can't. They
floor.
can't walk the ballroom with me. They can't
Correct.
look at the tables and space them for me. They can't look at the food presentation and say,
Yeah.
no, that's not going to work. They can I put more color on that fish. They can't taste the wine and say this is going to work with this meal. That they can't do yet. Thank you,
We're very
God.
fortunate. We're
Right?
very fortunate that we're that cannot affect us. There's a lot of
We
people
cannot
that,
be replaced with
and
that
it's funny.
yet.
I got a wedding invitation sent to my house, and it's a QR code now. I mean,
Everything is QR code because it's just
I will be
easier to
honest with
answer.
you. I
Yeah.
just felt it was like, what happened to the days of a beautiful, crisp, elegant, embossed invitation with I mean, like, where is it now? It's a QR code. I
Well,
just think that,
I'm still doing those. I'm still doing the pretty invitations, but I'm doing a QR code response.
but this is no. This was the back of this invitation was a huge QR code, which just said their names on it, and there was no Mr. and Mrs. or proud or
Yeah,
formally.
that's just it's bad. It's bad direction.
It just,
You know,
honest to God, it was like, it was ew. Like, how do
disappointing.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, how do you do a beautiful picture of your, like, it just, I was laughing at it
You know,
because
it's funny on the podcast and on my promos on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, whatever. I get a lot of questions, right? And I get girls like, from Tennessee or from, wherever in the country they are in smaller markets that'll say, I just can't see spending $5,000 on flowers, right? And I say, no, I totally understand where you're coming from. And I get it that in your market, this is a very high expectation. But in my world, I can do an escort table for $5,000. I
correct.
said
Easily.
because it's different. The approach is different. The way things are put together are different, and the markets in the United States are so diversified. And just because we happen to be in a higher end market, I never forget that people don't have that kind of money, and I'm always ready to guide them to see it. And even tell people today, look, show me images. Don't worry about price, as you said before. We can always work on the price. We can always work on something that looks like it. But don't send me a picture of like, a 16-foot peacock all dressed in floral
Mhm.
on the back, on the side of your aisle, because that's just dumb. I just
See,
can't do that. That's never, that's common sense. We can't do that,
and
for
then
your
another
budget.
thing is, but another thing is too, then when you got that same client doesn't want to modify anything from their particular order to kind of get to their budget, and they sit there with this puss on their face, basically saying, "Oh, well, I want that." And my answer to them is, "This is all a luxury. You don't need any of this. Okay, it's a
Oh yeah,
and
well, I go
you
through that
got to pick
also.
and choose your battles. You got to, because realistically, I always say to people, do you want to dilute your decor and put a little bit everywhere, or do you want to create 6 or 5 statement areas that it's going to be jaw breaking, show stopping?
Or they're going to remember the big pieces. They're never going to see the small ones. I always tell them.
Exactly. And some people get hung up on this. Oh, I really want something, here with off a memory table. I want it to cascade down and go up to the ceiling. And I'm like, okay, the majority of your budget you're spending on this. What about your dining room? Like,
Right.
people are going to remember. Don't you want that wow statement when you walk in? And it comes down to, like, sometimes you need to bring people back to ground, because it's like, well, I want that. I need that. I need
Like
this. I
I
want.
tell people all the time, right? Especially people client that have, significant money. And we discuss about how the room is set up and how we're going to spend the money on, especially on floral. And I say, look, all your friends know that you are relatively rich. And I'm very honest with them. So everything that you do, there's going to be an expectation for. So if you keep your ceremony, arch, chuppah, whatever you get married under, pretty, but not over the top, right? And you keep your ballroom over the top, they're not going to remember what the ceremony looked like. They only remember what the ballroom looked like,
Right.
because it's 4 hours as opposed to 45 minutes. One,
Mhm.
two, and then I say the centerpiece is the bride. The bride walking down the aisle, the music timing, the lighting effects, the way it's put together, the audio, way more important than this big thing full of flowers
And
with
you
no
walk by the spot.
substance.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It is.
I'll create the vibe for you where people are going to be. She can get married under a ladder, and I'll
You
make
know,
it look amazing because I'm going to create the vibe of them walking into something. Wow, it's not about the floral, but in the room when I walk in,
it's about the
I want to
floral.
be
It is.
wowed. Right. Because I can't create anything more than what I see and what
And
I
it's
live with
and
all night.
another, sometimes the girls be like, I want to use my bridal party flowers across my table.
Oh yeah.
And I look at them and say, okay, those flowers have been manhandled since 10 o'clock this morning. And you're the most significant, important table of the evening. I'm sorry, I will not do that. You need to have the most beautiful piece on your table because you're the host, and the host is you're the guest of honors. You're going to put used flowers or things that have been manhandled for 10 hours going from point A to point B on your table? Absolutely not. I won't do it.
And my favorite line, Phil, this is a father line, right? Who's paying the bill some of the time. And, sometimes I have moms who'll say, don't tell him. I'll write you a separate check.
That happens often. That happens
right?
very
It happens
often.
often, right? So that's funny. It's true in our industry, right? She goes, don't tell him. He's never going to understand. Never going to get it, right? But she has an account, obviously, with enough money in it, but he's not going to notice it's gone, right? But it's kind of funny. But I'll always tell them, I said, put your money where things that are super important that are going to live all night long. And I'll tell them, this is a total waste of money. This is not where the dollar should go. I know you want to do it, but no one's going to notice it. No one's going to care. And at the end of the day,
they get hung up on that. They get hung up.
It's money poorly spent.
Correct. I
poorly spent.
Prioritize. Prioritize.
I had a woman that it was a really funny story. She went to an event space in northern New Jersey, and she goes, "How much is it?" And she goes, "I want to go alone. You don't have to come. You don't have to come. I'll do the menu." I said, "Okay, go." I said, "It's fine. You don't have to come." But she goes, "I was there already." I said, "I want to handle it with my husband." She came back. I'm doing her budget. I said, "How much was it? What do you come up with?" And I know this place is about 300, 350, and that's the range of the full menu, right? At that time, plus. She comes back and she goes, I look at it and I said, "How did you spend like $650 a head?" She goes, "I added every dish at the cocktail hour that was extra." In other words, every option to add to the cocktail reception, I put it in. The diner station, this station of meat, this station of Chinese food, everything that was optional, plus the original 20 station New Jersey cocktail hour to begin with, right? And I'm saying, why would you do that? She goes, "Because my people like to eat." I said, "Listen to me. You have 1 hour if you get there exactly on time, right? Which means 55 minutes by the time you realize where you are. If you got one half a plate from every station, you could never do the whole room and see every station. And this is without eating, sitting, or talking to anybody."
You're right.
I said, so if this is visual impact, God bless you. If you think this is a waste, yes. Over the top, yes. I said, this is a total waste of money.
But I think some people,
the venue that accepted it, I called them up and say, "Why would you do that?" "Oh, Lou, she was very insistent." I said, "Yeah, but you got to be a guidance at one point." And I had to sit with her, argue with her, and I eliminated like half the stations. And then the day of, she goes, "Oh my God, there's so much food. You were right." I said, "I know, but sometimes the guidance has to come from the right place. Like
you're
we're
also
talking about guiding people in the right direction."
You know what I find too? Sometimes they'll execute that contract with this beautiful venue and they'll spend all this money.
Oh, they have no money left.
And then what happens is they don't take into consideration all the other elements you're going to need to kind of keep the wedding on that same level. And you have to be realistic with your budget,
It's a syndrome. I named this syndrome something. I won't mention the name of the place, but I call it this place syndrome, especially in the state of New Jersey, because the average bride here has a budget of 150 to 175,000, which is a big number overall in life.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It's a big number. I couldn't do a wedding in Manhattan for that kind of money at all. I couldn't even get into the room. Okay. But in New Jersey, I can. So what they do, they go to the venue, they hit it up, and they're at $100,000 in food and beverage. And now they realize they have 60 to 75,000 for the wedding dress, the photographer, the videographer, the music, and the floral, right? And in that order becomes decor, entertainment, and they work down the list. Now they have no money. And now they have money for small little centerpieces in this massive room rather than redirecting the dollars to doing something gorgeous in the room and memorable,
balancing it out,
or they buy a room. That's why I always say, if you're going to hire a planner, please hire before you get a venue.
Can I ask you a question? Right? And I find this, I find it happen often. I always say, do you have a desired budget or a range you want to spend? And some people are forthcoming and they'll say, okay, yes, I want this, and this, and I can't go above this, or, this is where I want to land in. And you have a guideline to do. But then there's some people who's like, well, I really don't know. I don't have a budget. How do you not have a budget? It's like going
because
to
they
buy
don't.
a house.
Because
I'm
and
not
that's a
going to go
good.
look at
That's a
$12
good
million
question.
houses that
No,
12
no,
million
but it's different.
can't afford.
The house
So
has a listing, and you can look at it. When you go into a car dealer, if you don't want to spend 50,000 in a car, you're not going to walk to a Beamer or a BMW, a Mercedes-Benz dealer, right? So we know what these are actual, normal products. Weddings have so much diversity and
correct.
so many options in them, right? So they don't know what things cost. That's why they get sticker shock when their first thing they go is wedding shopping. They sit down, and what they think is going to cost $35,000 is actually
But how
$90,000.
can you not have an idea? Like, I'm not going to walk into a Plaza hotel with a $200 person budget. Like, so how do you not gauge
Okay,
that?
I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people, and I'm going to give you the actual thought process. They go to dinner, right? And they go to a fancy restaurant. And the fancy restaurant, the appetizer is $25. The main course is 35 to 50, maybe 60. The tip is X amount. A glass of wine, the glass is there. So they figure they're at $100 now for dinner. Then they take it and they double it and they come up with 200. Then they add another $50 and they're at 250. And when they go extreme, they're at 275. How could it cost any more?
I mean,
And
listen,
that's
you
how
have
they
open bar
calculate.
for 5 hours.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
but they're calculating that they're buying food and beverage, right? And the bar is not going to take a big dollar amount on that because they're going to, how much people drink at the end of the day, right? They even stop drinking now. But what happens? So they go 300, 275, 300. Then they get there, they're at 425, right? And next thing you know, then they have to add in, another like 24% admin
security
charge.
services, yeah.
And then they add this in there. And then there's a 5% maitre d fee, right? And next thing you know, they're at 86,000, 94,000. But now they're in love with the venue and they do it and they don't realize now what everything else costs.
Yeah,
They don't understand that a photographer is 9 to 15,000. Design is going to be 25, 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. I can't put a number on design. My average client spends between 50 and 70 and $80,000 on the average. Some of them spend 130, 140.
but I think
Right?
that client knows. I think that client's very well aware that the types of things they're looking for are going to be in that price point. I mean, I think they're educated enough to know that. So when you ask somebody,
Sometimes
I think when you ask somebody their budget, like I know what I would spend if my daughter's getting married. I know I'm going to go into, okay, I'm going to spend X amount on this. I want her to have this. I love this. And you'll have an idea, but to sit there and say, well, I don't know. I kind of think
they don't
like,
know.
so how do you design something? Like, how do you come up and to present the ideas? Or a
I
lot of
tell
times,
them, I,
I,
I, I have a methodology, and so do you. But I'll sit there with a client that I know has the money that wants to book me, and so on. And I say, listen, realistically, do you want to book me first, or do you want to get me to do a budget for you? I like you. I want the event. I'm going to do it at no charge, but I want to be realistic. And I'll sit there and I go, if we're going to go here, this is the range. And I'm always pretty much on the money, right? She goes, that much? I said, yes. And let's look at design. Centerpieces, let's say medium price, 800 to 1,500 a table, right? 15 tables. I said, design for this, setup and delivery, design fee, all
30,000
that,
just on
right?
tables.
And I'm going 30, no, I'm going to go way higher than that, 35, 40, 50,000. I said, this is where you're going to be. And if you go higher, that's your fault, not mine, right? Then I go to linens and I go to charges and I go to, accoutrements, as they call them. Then I go
Mhm.
into photography. Then I go into this. But this is subjective to what your daughter or son-in-law likes. Be aware that I can get you a photographer for 3,500, but she's going to like the guy that's 15,000 because he
Mhm.
has the highest Instagram following, and you're not going to get away with it. And then she goes, how did you know? Because I know, right? And I said, this is what you're going to spend. I said, and the reality is going to be 20% higher. Are you willing to go there? And they'll look at me and they go,
Well, I think that's
okay.
imperative.
And I said, then we
You're
have a deal. We
educating
could
them.
do this.
You're educating a client. I think that
Right.
that's
But my job is to educate, but be realistic also. I said, I don't want you going in. You're going to think you're going to spend 200. I got a guy that called me last year and he goes, I want to do my daughter's wedding in Manhattan. I want to do 200,000. I said, I can't do it. He goes, what do you mean? I said, I can't do it. It was 175 people.
unless he's having 50 guests.
Right. If you're having 50 guests on on a Thursday, I can do it.
You can pull it off.
It's not going to happen. He goes, why? And I said, because this is what it costs to do this. He goes, that much? I said, then you have no money for the things that make up the wedding, like entertainment, like event design.
And the things
And
that
then I
are
get
very
my
important.
favorite line. My favorite line. They go, Louis, it's only one day. And my response to that, I said, no, 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 no. It's not one day. It's the day you remember forever. And then
True.
I'll ask them, where did you get married? And you know what I get, Phil? It's kind of funny, you know. Oh, our wedding. We got married, you know, at this place, you know, and people are still talking about our wedding. I always get that, right? And I said, guess what? No, they're not. But the fact that you think they are after 30 years or 25 years, I said, is very endearing to me, right?
Yeah.
Your daughter's wedding is going to make yours look like you hung out like, you know, in a backyard barbecue. And they're going to talk about her wedding. And I said, but it's your wedding also. And they go, I understand now. It has
You know,
nothing to do with the cost.
but I think the difference is, I think it comes back down to education. I just think that, like, I think a lot of times you have to kind of establish a boundary of price points that, you feel comfortable spending, because you're not going to sit there and design a wedding for somebody who really doesn't have the means to have all these items. I mean,
No,
so
it's a waste of time.
just
It's
be
a waste of time.
transparent about it.
It's a
Be
discredit to
transparent,
the client.
or educate me to understand, wow, I need to reevaluate myself. I need to reevaluate because this is really what I want. I need to reevaluate my budget. I need to see how we're going to pull this off. Be transparent about it, or be
Correct.
realistic.
Always.
I think people need to have realistic, expectations. I mean, yeah, we all love beautiful things and want all these different things, but when it comes down to it, we can do what we can afford. And I think that's something to be said nowadays with seeing all these amazing images and seeing weddings that take place
Crazy
all
what's
over
out
the
there.
world. There needs to realize those things cost money. Like, it's that.
Well, Phil, the funny part of it is that sometimes they'll spend 15 to 25,000 on a wedding dress.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? She goes, oh, it's gorgeous. I said, of course it is. I said, it's going to cost you, $2,500 an hour to wear that thing, right? But at the end of the day, that's what you want. That's what you get. I don't count people's money. I don't, my job is
100%.
to protect their money, but give them the highest value for the money. But things have, an inherent price.
But you also have to remember, it's your job to kind of make sure that the level of work they're going to get, for that money is the right level.
It's
of
equal
work.
to what? Yeah, and the value.
100%.
What do you think? What do you think if you had to put like a number, not a number, but if you had to think of the most unimportant decor element that people waste their money on, what is it?
I will tell you, like, as important as bridal party flowers, like in boutonnieres, nobody wants to wear a boutonniere all day anyway. Put a beautiful
No more,
pocket in my pocket. I think that, like, sometimes people get carried away with their personal flowers. I do think, sometimes, I mean, depending on the venue, certain venues you need to have certain areas of decor, and then certain venues, your lobby is stunning. I mean, you don't need to go as crazy when you walk in, because the venue itself, and you're walking into these it's beautiful architecturally designed spaces in New York City, complement it. You don't need to compete with it. So sometimes you can tone things down in key areas that will allow you to have more resources to do the other areas on a different level. So, I mean, it's everybody's desires and things. So I had one person who wanted me, they got married at a country club wedding on Long Island, and she did not like the entrance. And I think her wedding was starting like 7 o'clock in the evening. It was a Saturday evening in the fall.
Right.
And she was so focused on building these pillars with these flowers with their initials and their monogram. And I said to her, yeah, it's all well and good, but half the people are not even going to see it, because by the time it's twilight, dark, you're not even going to see it. But she was adamant about spending this. But then when it came in on the inside of the wedding, she's like, no, I don't want to go. The place card's fine. Let's just use the piece that the venue gives us and the club has on file. Cocktail arrangements are not necessary. But this whole thing on the street that everybody's going to drive by and not see is what you focused on. So, like, sometimes it makes no sense where people's mindset goes, but she was adamant about it. She was adamant, and we did it. And honest to God, and it's funny, I did her other daughter's wedding, and I said to her, well, what are we doing on the street? And she laughed at me. She goes, you were right. She goes, you were right. She goes, nobody called me. I said, oh my God, how beautiful. She goes, I took it the next day and I used it at the brunch. That's when people saw it at my brunch, is what she said to me.
And listen, you got to follow direction of the professional. I always tell them, follow the direction of the professional. This is why they're successful, right? You're not going to tell your doctor what to do, how to operate.
100%. I use that analogy all the time.
all the time. Just let me do my job. You want a great result? Let me do my job. If you don't trust me, then we shouldn't be working together.
That's exactly it. If you're going to question everything I'm doing, I'm saying to you, then I'm not the right fit for you. Then that's
right.
You know.
Right.
And
right.
if somebody's going to yes you to death on everything you want, you should think about that a little bit, because you go into a professional. Like I go to the doctor, he's going to prescribe me a medication. I'm going to follow his guidance. If I'm going to challenge the doctor and tell him, no, I want to do this and that, and I'm like, then I don't, what's the point of me going to that doctor?
It's kind of funny. I have clients that, especially sometimes, all the responses online and people DM me and they say, oh, why is it this? And I don't want to spend this. And I go, look, decor is a very, very, very important element. Obviously, the most important is where you're getting married, because people are going to Google it, look at it, and see it. That's going to set the tone. The second thing is when you walk into a room, just because the place is beautiful, you need to make it your own. It has nothing to do with the place. When you do something very, very unassuming on a table in a beautiful venue, you just pull down the whole value of the venue and your entire wedding. You pulled all the level all the way down. I don't care how great your DJ is, how great your band is, and they're dancing. I said your first impression is lacking. And when it's lacking, it just doesn't come together. Everything has to be at the same level of the experience. Yes. Are they very expensive? Yes, everything is very expensive. Tablescapes are expensive. But you know what? You need something. And like you said, if you don't want to do every table, just do some statement pieces that have wow factor, because it just makes the place look the way it's supposed to look. You just can't throw candles on a table. I love when they say, oh, I just love candles. I said, you think candles are cheaper than flowers? I said, they're not. I said,
well, the best has to be another one. I don't need lighting because I'm putting candles on the table. I said,
I know.
That's a big one I have.
That's another one. Yeah, of course. Lighting.
And another thing is, or
I'm going to use candles.
Yeah, I'm going to use candles. Or the one is, I hate the carpet in the ballroom, or I hate the chairs. Then I would say, then why did you book that venue if you really hate elements of that ballroom? Like, how do you expect to kind of cover the walls? Like I want to pipe and drape this whole wall. I don't want to see this. But then why did you book the space? Like, to me, then book a blank canvas if you want to create something like that, that's a loft style, and then create your own energy. But then they don't realize that piping and draping and bringing this, there's another cost involved in that. Like, it's not
massive cost involved, massive cost.
So it's just like sometimes you're like listening to it from on our side of it. You sit there and you say to them, okay, how do we remedy this?
You know what I tell them? You know what I tell them, Phil? You hate the carpet? I said, we can change it. They go,
you can change it.
I said, of course. I'll put an inexpensive white commercial rug right on top of it. It's going to cost you like $10,000-$12,000, and we'll change the whole room. What else you want to change?
They think that's on their decor budget. That's really not a decor budget thing.
That's not. It's not.
You're taking that away from your huppah. You're taking that away from your place card. You're taking it away from your centerpieces. Like, conceptualize
everything. I said everything is possible. Let's change the carpet. I've done it, right? Let's change the carpet. Yeah. You want to change the walls? We can change the walls. You want to change it? I said, but why did we book this venue? Or they wanted me to do like a high-end mitzvah, and they take me to a wedding venue, and there's gold and this thing. Oh, but our team is sports. I said, this doesn't work.
Correct. Yeah.
Just like the warehouse doesn't work for the expensive wedding. I said the venue and everything has to be cohesive.
You're starting off in a disjointed energy.
A disjointed situation. Everything has to flow.
Now you got to bridge it together, but bridging it together comes with this unnecessary cost factor that you wouldn't.
You're never going to get there. And you're never going to get there because the venue is what it is. The fact that you're transforming is just as dumb.
And then when you have a situation where the mother likes one thing and the daughter likes another thing, and then you become the referee trying to find a common ground.
Listen, I should have a degree in psychotherapy at this point.
I'll have the doctorate and the master's ×3 with that as well.
I've had so many fathers giving their speech, and they say, we'd like to introduce our wedding planner and our psychotherapist, Louis Avanti, in the room that kept this family together throughout. Because I never really get excited. I said, I hear you. I understand. And say, my mother just doesn't get it. Oh, my daughter doesn't understand. I said,
you're the voice,
she does, and mom does, and I got to go back and forth. Don't tell my daughter I said this. Don't tell my husband I said this. Don't tell, let's not tell the groom anything. Exactly. So this happens all the time.
Make up two invoices.
And never, ever tell the mother-in-law, right? So that goes without saying, right? But you put everything together. It's all about love. It's all about family unity. And I thank God every day.
Let's not lose sight of that.
I thank God every day for the profession that I am in, because our life, our job is just to make people happy, is to make them smile, is to say, Phil, you're
play a
amazing.
role in the major milestones of their lifetime, and I love doing
Yeah,
that.
and we get to make people smile, you
Yeah.
know, and
Creating a
that's our
positive
job.
energy. But listen, getting to that point sometimes is very. Like, we can all sit back and I can remember stories, and we've been blessed to meet some amazing people in the journey. We really
We
have.
do.
I got to tell you. I
Amazing
mean,
people.
I think I know more doctors, and if God forbid one day ever comes that I meet some medical, I know a database of doctors on the North Shore of Long Island like nobody else. Like,
Right,
but
it's true.
we've been blessed to meet some really amazing people, had some amazing experience, even working with some amazing professionals like who change and who are icons in the event industry. Like, it's just it's a great field to be. I mean, I love it. I got to tell you, there's never a day, I say it again, that I get up that I don't want to do what I do.
No, agreed. I'm the same way. And you know what? And when you go out and you socialize with people in the event industry, or you go to a place and you walk in and you feel familiar, you feel like you're at home.
Yeah, it's and
It's
you're
like
like, oh my God.
you go home
And
that night
now
so satisfied, you know, and it's just a great
for
feeling.
me, what I'm dealing with now, which I'm loving, is like I did the parents' weddings, and now I'm doing the children's weddings. And
Yes.
if people come in and they're like, I don't know if you're gonna, I'm like, remember you. I'm like, of course. And it's like, it's such an endearing feeling to be like, wow, that you're playing such an impact in people's roles in like the happiest, and to see their families and doing the next
We all did
generation.
our wedding. Don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
You know,
it's like,
that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Hey,
yeah, but
Phil,
it's
how much was our wedding? $3,000
yeah, and I'm
back
funny.
then, you
I've
know?
had some bright moms bringing, oh, look at my contract from 27 years ago. I'm like, oh my God, you still have that. But it's
Let me
funny
see
how,
that
like,
contract. Let me see. Oh
yeah.
my God, what was I doing? You
So it's,
know,
yeah, but it just comes to the point where, like, it's beautiful to see the
it's
whole
fulfilling. It's fulfilling.
grow, the whole industry grow, and then to see them doing their bar and bat mitzvahs, and like, it's just a beautiful, like, it's really amazing when you have that connection with somebody. It just, it's a great feel. I think that's one of the most beautiful things about what we do.
It is.
Like, it just like a deep rooted history, and people look at you, and the feelings of the emotions they had on that day, it brings it right back to life when they see you, because they know you played
It
the role.
does. It does. It brings right back,
It
and
is great.
they love when you remember a detail from their
Oh,
wedding, no matter how long ago it was, and they
yeah,
go, "Oh my God, he remembers us." It's just a feeling that they don't have with anyone else. I remember you did a
exactly.
wedding. You did a wedding for me at the Garden City Hotel, I think 2018, 2019.
Hmm?
And when I see the father, because they're friends of the family, but they're
Yeah.
personal friends, when I see the father, he always looks at me and he goes, "I'll never forget when we walked into the room that day at the
Hmm.
Garden City, you know, with your friend Phil,
We
the
did
emotion."
another wedding for that family too at the Tribeca. Wasn't it the
Yes,
sibling?
the Tribeca
Yeah,
rooftop. Yeah,
beautiful family. Very,
and
very
but
nice.
he always remembers, you know, the one that you did at Garden City, right?
The
And he
initial
goes,
impact.
I goes, you walked in. He goes, the feeling, the way you showed us around, and you know, he was there, and he looked. He goes, I was just floored. I was saying, I was so excited. I couldn't wait for people to come in and see what he produced, you
Yeah,
know,
it's a nice
which is a
feeling.
reflection on me, reflection on you. And we see it every day. We say, how is it? Phil looks great. He looks good. We're not going
Yeah,
to sit there and go, oh,
I love
Phil,
this.
you know,
I love taking the
right.
back seat and just watching them come in and be,
No, no, right.
and
And
that's
I love that feeling,
beautiful.
but it's funny because even sometimes, you know, you work with professionals and it's magnificent and they go, you like it? I say, yeah, I love it, you know, but, you know, I see this all the time. I expect it to be that good, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
but for the clients, the first time they see it, sometimes we don't say, oh, you know, wow, this is great, fantastic. I said,
No, for us,
oh, it
it's the
looks great.
norm. It's the
Right. It's
norm.
just it's a
Yeah,
norm, right? The
we do week in
expectation
and
is
week
there.
out.
Oh, like my friend who sings, he goes, you like the band? Like, yeah, the band was great. You guys were awesome. You know,
Hmm.
and you know, because I'm not going to dwell on it because I expect you to be good. I expect you to
Right,
be great.
exactly.
Oh,
You're
doing our
going into
God,
this
I
knowing
expect to
you're
be the. I'm
going.
not going to
Yeah,
sit there because, oh my God, the best thing I ever had in my
exactly.
life. You know, not like that. You know, it's about
No,
the expectation is very high. You fulfill the expectation. Okay, next,
and
right? But
that's
for
it.
them, it's the first time. So
Exactly. Sometimes we're like, oh, we know already prior to executing it, it's going to be what it is. And it's like, we don't share that degree of excitement that they're going to feature at that given
yeah, it's kind
moment.
of funny. I had one client that goes, "Don't ask Louis. Don't tell Louis everything is great. Why? Because he's going to tell you, I know."
Well, there you go.
And I
It's
saying,
true.
you know, they go, Louis, everything is fantastic. I go, I know, you know, but
But
I
you
say
know,
it in a funny way.
that's a client. That's a client that that like they hire you for that reason. Like if you're going to be speculative and holding on to that oh my God, this is going to be great, then that shows that you weren't 100% believed in that vendor at the given time. So when you use your team will follow your lead, it's foolproof. It's foolproof.
Foolproof.
Yeah, it's an insurance policy. I always say it's an insurance policy.
So Phil, this has been obviously I know it was going to be fun. And it exceeds my expectations. More fun than I thought it was going to be. Which
Absolutely,
is great.
It's it's when it's authentic and it's natural and it flows. I mean, we can sit here.
It should be just a conversation.
Yeah.
Phil, share your Instagram.
It's Pedestals Florist, Pedestals Floral Decorators actually on Instagram. Yeah, you'll see me if you like to see my face. You'll see me doing some funny things with my team, and you'll get to know our team and stuff. So yeah, pop DM me.
And the TikTok channel is the same.
Same thing. It's all Pedestals Floral Decorators. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great to see you, my friend.
Likewise, my regards, and I'll see you on the dance floor doing some weddings with you.
Exactly.
Right?
Everyone, you've been listening and watching Hard Boiled. Wait till our next episode. Thank you.